Sneaker collabs are dead.
You know, what makes a bad sneaker collab? I think, to me, it's pretty evident.
What do I not like about sneaker collabs?
But it kind of make you wonder, like, who okayed this?
When I think about collabs that maybe aren't my favorite or aren't as great.
What makes a bad sneaker collaboration?
Let's play a game. If I asked you what was the best sneaker collab in the last few years, what would you say? Now, wait, don't answer yet. I want you to actually think about why you think that shoe was the best sneaker collab in the last few years and not just go on hype. That's a lot harder, isn't it? Over the last few months, I've seen a bunch of different sneaker collabs, and in my mind, I started to question what makes this one so much better than this one. So my thought was, let's just go through the collection that I have here in this room and rank them by collaboration. And I started to try to put together a certain criteria to determine how I would do those rankings, and it was actually a lot harder than I expected. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. But I want you to start thinking about what makes a sneaker collab good versus what makes a sneaker collab bad.
I think that as long as the brand that is collaborating with the other brand stays true to their aesthetic, then you can't really go wrong. Like, one of my favorite collabs in recent years is probably the Union Jordan 1s. I think they did such a good job. It's a really beautiful shoe and I wear it all the time and I always get compliments on it. I love it when people have fun with their collaborations. They don't take themselves too seriously and they still stay true to the aesthetic of their brand.
So you ask anyone in recent years about a sneaker collaboration and they will no doubt bring up this one. This is the Union Air Jordan 1. But when looking at this shoe, in comparison to other collabs, there really isn't that much about it that is unique or stands out. Honestly, it's literally just an Air Jordan 1 with the top and the bottom that are mismatched. That isn't particularly special, at least on the outside. When the shoe first popped up online, there was a very sort of palpable hype in the air. And this is one of those instances where it isn't necessarily about the way that the sneaker looks, but I think it's more about the concept of the sneaker, and that is what resonated with the public. The story behind the shoe is taking an old Jordan 1 and putting it together with another shoe so you have a complete pair and stitching them together. But why did that connect with sneakerheads? My first thought is because it touches on nostalgia, the nostalgia factor that we all have for sneakers. Many of us that are in love with sneakers today are in love with sneakers because we couldn't afford them when we were younger. That drive and that need to, I guess in a sense, compensate from when we were young is enough of a driver to get us to buy a product as an adult. Union, in their own way, was able to tap into that need. They connected the dots in a sense and made a collaboration that stands out in the sea of crazy collabs that we seemingly see every week.
What makes a dope sneaker collab for me is something that's authentic and executed perfectly. I think when you have both those things, sky's the limit into what both sides can create. And then obviously you factor in all the bells and whistles in terms of marketing and storytelling and the way, you're gonna build that hype for your targeted audience.
So sneakers has recently moved from the niche to the collector phase of their life, and very few companies have been able to create a cult-like following the way that Disney has. They are one of the best, if not the best, when it comes to telling stories, especially stories that we connect to as kids. Knowing that sneaker culture is rooted in storytelling, the latest collaboration from Disney and Reebok and Bait on the Toy Story pairs takes an almost opposite approach to the Union Jordan 1. The story of this pair is literally written all over the shoes. Pixar's Toy Story is something that we can all relate to in one way or another. It is instantly recognizable, and the two characters on the shoes have become household names. Instead of just making or doing a colorway or adding a name, they actually took things to the next level and molded the shoes after the most prominent characters in the movie. By taking that approach, they speak to, I would say, the duality of the shoes as well. Designed as performance running shoes, they also played a role as a lifestyle icon when they were released. And to make things even further, they made material choices on the upper of the shoes that continue that story. Now, is this a collaboration for everyone? No, I would say not at all. But that isn't a bad thing. You have to know your audience. Bait was smart enough to know that this wasn't going to get the hype beast all excited, but the Disney crowd, they were gonna love it. If some sneakerheads got into it, that's great. But if not, that isn't really who this pair was made for. And to top it off, the brand followed up the release with the pair dedicated to the army men in the movie. Now, I imagine that most kids have either seen or played with those toys at some point, and they took the collab all the way with the colors and the materials. Again, telling a story, or toy story, if you will, that directly connects with the customer.
All right, what makes a good sneaker collab? For me, it's 3 parts. Understanding, your DNA and your heritage personally, and then your collaborative partners. I think is super essential to understanding, what you can do and where you're going. And I think 2 is, being able to convey your story clearly, where someone can understand what you're trying to feel. But ultimately, you want that story to be, interpreted however, that brand fan or that follower, that consumer, perceives it. And I think lastly is really making people feel something, that type of emotion, or uncovering that feeling and connection of what you're trying to do.
Another element of a good collaboration is the bringing together of stories, or in this case, bringing together 2 legacies. With this collab between Jordan Brand and Levi's, it made sense because it brought together 2 brands that really complement each other. It wasn't just one-sided. Levi's obviously has a legacy of its own, and so does Jordan Brand, and that is why this one worked. But I think it was actually a little more than that as well. When you think about the 2 brands, when you think about how they are connected, it all makes sense. Michael Jordan is obviously known for wearing a ton of denim. Not particularly well, but he wears a lot of denim. When you think about denim, there is not any other company that comes to mind that has the respect, the history, and the story that Levi's has. Pair that with one of, if not the most recognizable sneaker brand in the world, and you have something meaningful that will resonate with the consumer on a level that a collab with a new denim brand just wouldn't provide. And that is not to say that there aren't other dope denim brands out there that are doing incredible work. A lot of times people ask, why didn't Jordan Brand align with this brand or with that brand? And they seemingly take offense to it. But from my perspective, it isn't a strike against you if the brand doesn't work with you. It's more of a story alignment. What story is the brand trying to tell, and which brand out there best conveys that story in a way that will connect with the consumer?
What I think makes a great sneaker collab is really starting with the story behind the shoe and how that relates back to you in your life. So for me, I might be looking for a collab that has to do with the city that I live in, or has to do with my favorite sport, basketball, or different foods. I really like to cook, so things that relate to food really work for me. It might even be something that's more nostalgic, or telling people about your past, like old cartoons and TV shows. At the end of the day, your personal style is really a way to tell people more about yourself. And so for me, if I can wear my favorite sneaker brands and then give you a little bit more insight on who I am, that's really a great collab in my mind.
Another great way collabs come together is not necessarily by story strictly, but perspective. Like many of you, I'm a huge video game fan. From retro games to the latest season of Fortnite, my love for gaming is strong, and I know I'm not the only one. For years, sneaker brands have been tapping into the world of video games to connect with the world of sneakers, and to be fair, those stories don't always line up. But what does line up is the connection those 2 products have made with the consumer. Take, for instance, Xbox and the PlayStation. For the most part, these 2 systems do just about the exact same thing. Yes, they have their separate individual games, but I would say 95% of what these systems do is pretty much identical. But that hasn't stopped a segment of gamers from pledging their allegiance to one or the other. Now, if you're in the sneaker world, you know that same dynamic exists between brands, warranted or not. And the other factor is that people that grew up playing video games as a major part of their lives are now fully functioning adults with disposable income. Connect those 2 things together and you have the making of another great collaboration in my mind. These stories of those products may not be the same, but they both have an integral part in the life of the consumer. As the world of sneakers continues to get larger, there is a need to continue the way perspectives are told and shared through product collaboration. Like this. It isn't fancy. It's not the most bold way to express your perspective, but it doesn't have to be. Brands and brand collaborators have to know when they can go all out and when they have to pull back. If they've done their research and follow their instincts, you should be able to walk away with a product that actually reaches a bigger audience.
I think the best sneaker collaborations happen when brands partner with artists, designers, culture creators, and culture curators to produce the best story, have the best connection, and above all, bring both of their audiences together to create something totally unique.
The thing about collabs in the current world is that they're changing. Jumping back to like this shoe, the Fragment Jordan 1. Many people see this as one of, I would say, the pinnacle releases when it comes to collaborations. It isn't super complicated, it's not overly done, and by most accounts, it's actually pretty simple. If you aren't in the know, you may not even know that this is a collaboration. I've heard many people comment on my Instagram that they like my blue Jordan 1. And that leads me to the other factor in the world of collabs, and that's the deep cuts into the culture. While the Jordan 1 is obviously as close as you can get to a household name, Fragment Designs is not. In fact, I'd even argue that most sneakerheads aren't in the know when it comes to the work that Hiroshi Fujiwara has done. But Jacques, I thought the culture and the communities need to understand everything for it to be a successful collaboration. Well, in most cases, I would say that is true, but there was something unique about this collaboration that breaks that rule. See, sometimes collabs come from those that are passionate about the product and know it in a way in and out. In this case, Fragment Designs had an intimate knowledge of the Air Jordan 1 and the colorways of the shoe. Through this love for the shoe, Hiroshi was able to elicit an emotional attachment to a shoe through just something as simple as the color blocking and color choices on the shoe. Now, while it seems easy to do, there have been plenty of colors on the Air Jordan 1 that don't get the same sort of treatment from the sneaker community. I mean, some will say it is the Fragment logo on the heel, but I believe if you look a little deeper, you'll see that it's more than that.
The goal should be for brands to seek out these artists, designers, and culture creators in the most unique places possible. And it's not necessarily somebody with a large following. It's just somebody that's hitting a nerve that the brand itself can't hit. That's the key to making a great sneaker collaboration. And if anybody's listening, I'm one of those people.
In most cases, it's a combination of these things that make a collaboration work. It can be as simple as adding a nice colorway of a shoe, or as complicated as taking the look and feel of an object or person and translating that through materials and color choices. There isn't a right answer when it comes to making a successful collab, but if you look at the collabs that work, you will often see a deep-rooted passion, knowledge, and understanding of both sides that's required in order to make things work. Throwing your name or your logo on a shoe isn't enough to make people feel a certain kind of way. Using a popular model isn't enough to make your brand cool or give off the emotion needed to curry favor with the sneaker community. You need to look deeper. You need to make a connection. You need to tell a story that's relatable. You need to have a distinct perspective. You need to speak the language of the consumer and create something that makes both sides better. There are obviously a lot more collabs that work outside of the few that I've shown here, and I'd actually like to know what are some of your favorite collabs and why you think that work. This isn't about saying sneaker collabs are dead or no one cares about sneaker collabs anymore. This is really about helping people understand why things work. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Leave me your thoughts below, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
And it's not necessarily somebody with a large following. It's just somebody that's hitting a nerve that the brand itself can't hit. That's the key to making a great sneaker collaboration. And if anybody's listening, I'm one of those people.